Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for another user group webinar for our Eventscribe Connect series. We are excited to bring some new information for you today that hopefully will give you some new insights. And we want to hop in as quickly as we can here. So my name is Erin Bawano. I am the Product Marketing Manager here at Cadmium. I will be moderating this session. But you're really here to hear from our experts, which are Beth Barnhart and Amy Hicks. We have Beth here joining us. She is a product specialist within the Eventscribe platform, and Amy, who is a project manager helping bring all of your events to life. So I want to welcome those folks to join us today, and I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Amy. She's going to dive right into our content for today.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin. And thank you everybody for joining. I'm excited to talk about surveys and quizzes and Survey Magnet. It is my favorite product in the Eventscribe product line. But as I was preparing for today's presentation, I really think we may have wanted to change the title to The Power of Feedback, because that's really what we do these surveys and quizzes for. It's not just, to have people fill out these surveys because you need them for your accreditation, or they need to do an evaluation, to get their CE or take a quiz. The power is really in that feedback in both the surveys and the quizzes that you disseminate to your attendees after those events. But I think, like, as humans, we really do crave feedback in our everyday life, even if we're not consciously thinking about it. Like, as employees, we want to know if we're doing a good job. As consumers, we want to tell businesses like what they're doing well and what they're not doing well. Like, we want our experiences to be improved. As business people, we want our customers to tell us what we're doing well. Like, we always want to be improving. Erin even already asked at the end of this session for you guys to provide us feedback, because without feedback, all we can do is guess and hope that we are going to make those changes that are going to make things more helpful, more beneficial, improving your attendee experience. So all of that to say, as meeting planners, spending months and months, years, hours planning your meeting and then not collecting that feedback and then acting on that feedback is a little silly. By understanding what worked well, what maybe didn't work so well, you can then make informed decisions to deliver exceptional experiences for all of your attendees. So why is event feedback important? Well, like we're already talking about, if we don't know what's not working, we don't know how to fix it. So identifying errors, missteps, shortcomings. You can't be everywhere as a meeting planner. You're in this huge venue. There's a lot going on. You can't be everywhere all at once. So you're not going to know maybe that, something went wrong in one session room, and, you're not going to be able to fix those problems if you don't get the feedback and analyze it and make those changes. You can, and then, with your attendees providing those actionable insights, you can make those improvements for future events, and make data-driven decisions that will change and improve that attendee experience. So asking your attendees, for maybe new places to have your events. Maybe your attendees know about venues that you've never heard of that, they would be more likely to attend. Asking what kind of networking opportunities they want to see. The time of year they would prefer to be attending meetings. All of these things are really important to find out and then act on those. Act on that feedback from your attendees is super, super important. Something else you can do with all of that feedback is demonstrate your value. So creating a portfolio of the positive feedback, then you have a great place to go when you need a testimonial. Including it in your marketing materials, like shouting all of the good stuff from the rooftops is going to attract new attendees, keep attendees returning, demonstrate your ROI to your stakeholders. But even more important is keeping maybe a portfolio of that negative feedback. That's the feedback that those are your opportunities for improvement. And those are the things that you want to keep track of, and keep track of the changes you make based on that feedback. And then sharing that information with your attendees is probably even more important than sharing all of the good stuff, because your attendees want to feel seen and heard. Your attendee feedback can also help you adapt to new trends. So staying ahead of the curve in latest industry trends, industry standards, event technology is going to keep your events relevant and engaging. Especially in a multi-generational workforce that we are currently in, it is really hard to have a single event appeal to boomers, millennials, and Gen Z, but pinpointing those emerging trends in your attendee feedback will help you do just that. And appealing to multi-generations will keep your events highly attended for years to come. And then finally, another thing that your event feedback is going to do, especially if you're acting on it and letting your attendees know how you're acting on it, is fostering that loyalty. So meeting your attendees' needs and their expectations, and your attendees seeing those changes being implemented, is going to build that loyalty, and your loyal attendees are going to keep attending, and they're going to recommend your events to other people, and they are going to generate a lot of long-term success for you. So nobody likes to hear negative feedback. Nobody wants to hear it, but that is going to be the best feedback. You can't improve if you don't know what's not working. So this is just a little quote that I found. So ultimately, you can have what you think is a stellar planning process, only to find out your event hasn't hit the mark. And that is difficult to hear. If that's the case, though, it's an opportunity to improve next time. So really dig into your feedback to find out where you can improve. Just as important as overall event feedback is your session feedback. So individually having your attendees individually evaluate the sessions they have attended. Some of the benefits to doing that is demonstrating effectiveness. So determining whether or not the stated objectives and goals were met and whether the session was free of commercial bias is super important, especially for organizations approved to offer continuing education. Some of these questions may be required by their they may be required to ask these types of questions to meet their accreditation criteria. And then after the event, the feedback can be analyzed and used for future content planning to ensure the content and the event continues to meet accreditation standards. Improving future sessions, learn what kind of content your attendees want to hear about. Find out what kind of presentation formats really resonate with your attendees. So if your attendees tell you that they don't like panel sessions, consider scheduling less panel sessions and find out what kind of presentations they want to attend, and start scheduling those into your event. So building your schedule based on your attendees' preferences is going to keep them happy, engaged, learning, and again, returning. Session feedback can also help organizers ensure that sessions are accessible for everybody. That's going to create a more inclusive learning environment, and more people are going to feel comfortable attending. And then session feedback can also be used to help your presenters, your speakers, your instructors professionally grow. Finding out what attendees liked, what they didn't like, what they found helpful, maybe what wasn't so helpful, is going to help your presenters learn, change their teaching styles, how they're presenting their content, and make them better in the long run too. So in some of my research for this presentation, 68% of event professionals consider attendee feedback to be essential for improving future events. And again, it really is important. They are the lifeblood of these events, and if they're not happy, they're not going to come back. So making sure that we know what they don't like and how to fix it is important. 84% of event professionals consider attendee satisfaction to be the most critical measure of event success. I think that speaks for itself. Attendees, if they don't like the event, they're not going to come back. But if you take action on their feedback, they will be more likely to return. So again, leveraging the attendee feedback effectively can increase future event engagement by up to 33%. And 78% of attendees are more likely to return if their opinions are valued. So as I said, really acting on that feedback is going to make them feel seen and heard, and they're going to return so they can so they can continue to learn and grow from your content. So on that kind of same vein, quizzes. The feedback from quizzes can also provide you and your presenters with some important information on how to improve your events, your educational content in future years. So CE quizzes can be used to assess the understanding of new concepts presented. Having attendees take CE quizzes is another way for organizations to meet their accreditation requirements. They're often used in conjunction with on-demand content, recorded content, allowing the attendee to demonstrate their understanding of new concepts presented. Quizzes can also enhance retention of those new concepts learned. Quizzes are also going to provide your attendees with immediate feedback on determining their knowledge gaps, maybe where they need to study further or re-engage with that content to make sure that they really are understanding and retaining those concepts. And presenters can also use feedback from quiz results to evaluate their teaching styles and continue to make adjustments where needed. So pass-fail rates are super helpful for analyzing how helpful a course was overall, and maybe the presenter needs to change some content about their curriculum. But even more, drilling down into the data even further. So like maybe there was a quiz where there was one question where every single attendee got it wrong. That could indicate that a topic was included entirely and the curriculum needs to be reviewed and updated. And then this is just an example of how Survey Magnet provides some of that immediate feedback. So you find out that you maybe didn't do so great the first time you took the quiz. You can re-engage with that content. And then again, depending on the organization's setup needs, you may have multiple tries to pass a quiz. And hopefully you do. And with that, I am going to pass this off to Beth.
Yes, thank you, Amy, and good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to go through an overview of the Survey Magnet for you today. So the Survey Magnet is our Eventscribe solution that will help you facilitate credits and certificates, as well as gain that feedback from evaluations that you will use to make your future events better, just as Amy explained. So let's go ahead and jump into this. So I think it's going to be most helpful to get a feel for how beneficial the Survey Magnet is going to be and the options you have on the back end if you understand the user's experience from the front end first. So depending on your required accreditation processes, the Survey Magnet can streamline the credit claiming and the evaluation process for your attendees. So instead of going into one place to get credit claiming and then go to another place to provide evaluations and feedback, they can do it in the same location at the same time, making it much more easy, much more efficient, and really hoping to increase that participation rate by how streamlined you made it. So there are a few different ways users can access the Survey Magnet. So you can add a tile or a navigation item on to the website, which you're going to see in that left image. It's a little small, but you can see it there. And you can add a tile onto that mobile app with the same idea. And when a user clicks this, it's going to take the user, its profile information, and it's going to go ahead and direct them to their main page of their Survey Magnet account. Another option you have is by creating content buttons on the presentation itself. So you're going to see that on the right side there. So you can create a button that displays on the presentation profile. And the cool thing about these buttons are that when a user clicks them, that's going to take that user directly to that presentation's evaluation. So they're not being directed to a main page, but they're taking all the way to that evaluation, which again, we're keeping it easy, we're keeping it streamlined and hoping to get them to go ahead and complete that evaluation right away and increase that participation rate. Now, if you're not using the Eventscribe website or the mobile app, that's okay too. The Survey Magnet does have a dedicated login page that you can direct users to, and they can provide their credentials or create accounts, however you got it set up, but it can be a standalone product as well. All right. So the Survey Magnet is an interactive task-based system, just like our Abstract Scorecard, Education Harvester, or Expo Harvester, meaning when a user logs in, they see a list of tasks they need to complete, or essentially their to-do list. So tasks are great because they provide a lot of flexibility and customization for your event's specific needs. Tasks can be filtered to specific attendees based on registration codes, provide restrictions based on timing or whether they need to complete something before they complete something else. Or you can collect unique data from a certain subset of attendees based on a registration package they purchased or based on their position. So we'll talk more about these restrictions and these access options a little later in the presentation. So let's dive into the functionality of the Survey Magnet from an admin's or your guys' perspective. The Survey Magnet is a great addition to your Eventscribe lineup because it works hand in hand with all of the products. So that way you're not duplicating work multiple times. For example, in the Education Harvester, you set up your schedule, you spend a lot of time making that just right, and that schedule is going to talk to the Survey Magnet just like it would the website or the app. So you're able to import all that work you did in the Ed Harvester into the Survey Magnet. You can bring over not just your titles and your times, but you can bring over your speakers and their titles and their learning objectives and credit hours. So that's just a couple of the fields, but there's a big list of fields that you can sync over from the Education Harvester to include in your evaluations. Not sure if you're aware of this, but in the Education Harvester, you can also collect quiz questions from speakers. So if you choose to implement quizzes in your Survey Magnet or need them for accreditation purposes, you can collect them in the speaker portal in the in the Ed Harvester, and they sync to the Survey Magnet. So you're collecting them once and then it just comes on over. You're not needing to enter it into a different place. On the flip side, when you're done collecting evaluations in the Survey Magnet, so after your event, you're done with the evaluation period, you can communicate that session feedback back to the speakers in their speaker portal. So you're not needing to pull the evaluations and send them out and communicate them separately. They can go right back into that speaker portal that they've entered many times before and see their evaluation feedback. So thinking then attendee information, it kind of works the same way. So the Survey Magnet talks with the website and the app. So when an attendee is filling out their registrations forms, whether it's in our registration module or it's somewhere else and you're using an integration to get it into the website and app, that information syncs into the website and the app. And then it can take it a step further and sync that same information into the Survey Magnet. So that way, attendees are only needing to enter their information one time into that reg form, and then it's still coming through and providing efficiency for them throughout their other products, including the Survey Magnet. So it kind of acts like a single sign-on amongst themselves. And I think that's great too, because again, I can't stress it enough, but keeping it simple or efficiency on those attendees will encourage them to keep completing their evaluations and coming back. All right. So the base of the magnet is built around assessments. And we got a few different options here. We can accommodate general evaluations, so kind of your overall event evaluation. We can do session evaluations, and we can do quizzes. And there's a lot of customization that can happen among all of these options. So looking at evaluations first, those are made up of questions, obviously. And those have many different question types you can do. So we can do the typical true, false, or multiple choice, yes to no kind of thing. But we also can do a Likert scale to where you can ask questions and get their opinions on very good to very bad, or the net promoter score where you're ranking 1 through 10. You can also do the free form questions where you're collecting people's answers. Their comments and their thoughts and that kind of thing. So you have a lot of options in there to really get your evaluations and your surveys exactly where you want them to be. With that, we can also do branch logic in these evaluations, which is great. For example, if you are doing an event evaluation, an overall evaluation, and you want to ask the section on the exhibit hall, you want to know their feedback on that. You can start the question with, did you visit the exhibit hall? And if that attendee marks no, they will skip all those questions and they'll just move down to the next section. And that's great, again, keeping it efficient for the attendees, but that's also making sure you're not collecting data that's going to skew it to where it's not correct, right? Because we're not having somebody who didn't go to the exhibit hall fill out information on something they didn't participate in. So I think that's really great and keeps it kind of to the point. We've got quizzes as well. As Amy mentioned, you can do your quizzes in here. And that's a little more, not as flexible as much as you're asking a question, knowing their knowledge and having them select an answer. But you can decide how they're going to go through that quiz. So we can provide a linear style, meaning we're listing all the quiz questions on one page, and then they're just kind of scrolling down and answering them as they go. Or we can do a navigation style where it's more book style. Where they're flipping pages. So, they land on their page 1 and it's question 1 and they answer it and they click next. And then there's an explanation, or they see if they got it correct or incorrect. And then they click next and then it's question 2 and so on. So there's a few different ways you can present that quiz so that it works best for them. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, users access these evaluations by the tasks you create. So tasks provide a lot of flexibility in how you can set up your magnet and how your attendees are going to access what they need to do. So we have 4 types of tasks, and they all have a different job. More than likely, you're going to see all 4 tasks in your survey magnet. And there's going to be times where you're going to see multiple of these tasks in your magnet. And that's okay. That just kind of plays into how flexible the magnet is and how much you can customize it for your needs. So the profile task is used to collect user data. So of course, a lot of that will come through that sync with the website and the app or your registration, but maybe you didn't think to ask certain questions in the registration and you need to collect them for continuing education, such as a license number or the licensure state. You can also just recollect information. If you had registration open for 12 months and maybe you want people to re-enter their data, you can have them do that. That's what the profile task is for. The profile task also allows users to self-select categories they might fall into, such as, what type of credit they're claiming or what their position is, and then go through specific tasks that you laid out for that category they selected. And these are user groups. And I'm going to cover these in just a few slides. So we have the survey task, which allows users, again, to access one survey. So that's used for your event evaluation or your overall evaluation. But you got your credit selection task, that third one listed there. This is where you're going to go ahead and you're going to pull in your schedule and you're going to have quizzes or evaluations for each of your schedule item. So I like to think of this task as your session selection task because the user is going to go in and they're going to select all the sessions they attended. That's how they're going to create their transcript, or that's, how they're going to claim their credit or provide the evaluations. And yes. So that is really where your schedule comes in, imports it. They select their schedule in this task. So that's really looking for several items in there. And then last, you have your download task. And that is where the user is going to go and download that certificate you create. You also have the ability to provide an external URL there if you're not doing certificates inside the system. Say you need them to go somewhere else or sign in somewhere else and access it. you can direct them that way through the survey magnet as well. All right. So now that we talked about kind of the base of the magnet, so the tasks, the assessments, we need those to have the magnet. We also do credits and certificates in there too. So some people use them, some people don't use them. You know, these are more of the optional thing, but more often than not, you use some piece of this. The survey magnet can handle up to 30 different types of credit at the same time. So, and these can all be filtered or granted based on registration codes, based on these user groups, based on unlock codes. We have so many different ways that we can make sure people get the credit they're supposed to have. And that's something you'll want to talk to your project manager about. We also have the certificates in the system, and we have a certificate editor that you can use to create your own certificate and edit that anytime you need to. So there's a lot of customization in the certificate, and you can format it any way that's needed for your guidelines. So you can add images, you can add signatures, you use hotkeys so that it can pull dynamically users' information into the certificate. So I've got an example here where on the left side, you see that certificate editor, and you see those kind of the hotkeys. You see the full name with the @ signs on the side and the event name and custom credit table. Those are the hotkeys. And on the right side, you see how that certificate translates to a user's account. So that the system is pulling in the user's personal information to make them that personalized certificate. Again, you're doing one certificate and everybody's getting their own personalized certificate. The other good thing about that certificate editor is that you are able to duplicate them for year to year to year. So if you spend a while and you make that perfect certificate this year, you don't need to redo it next year. You just duplicate it and then you adjust what you need to. And hopefully using hotkeys, you shouldn't need to adjust too much because it's all pulling in information for the specific event it's tied to. So that's super exciting on that. All right. As I've mentioned, evaluations, credits, certificates can be locked down. So users who have completed certain actions or have certain background permissions can access what they need. We have so many different options and different ways to ensure they're getting the correct credit and items they need, but you need to talk about it with your project manager because we want to make sure they're going the most efficient way and we're using all your information to the best of its ability to get people where they need to go. And your project manager is going to best guide you that way. The other thing we can't stress enough is that you need to start thinking about this at the beginning of your planning process. So do not wait and start thinking about who can access what and how they should access it when you get to your survey magnet setup, because you're almost at the event. You might even be after your event. You know, if you start thinking about your end goal and where they need to end up at the end, at the beginning of your planning process, that is going to be so much easier because those registration codes and those unlock codes, all of that starts in registration and your integration and your education harvester. So if you're bringing those items and those thoughts up to those project managers, we're going to start that setup and get things lined up just right for when you get to that survey magnet setup. So again, we cannot stress that enough. Start thinking about it at the very beginning of your planning, because that's going to save you when you're down at the last minutes, you know, all over the place trying to do that survey magnet setup. All right. So let's talk about access restrictions, because I think this is probably one of the most overlooked options that the magnet can do, and also at the same time ends up being one of the most used features of the magnet, because you want to make sure people are efficiently getting where they need to go, and filtering and restrictions are doing that and making sure people don't get what they shouldn't be getting. So let's talk about task filtering. And there's two ways that we can filter tasks in the magnet. The first option here is the user groups on the left side there. This is typically a self-selected option that the attendees choose when they first log into the magnet and end up in their profile task. So they select from a group of options you provide, and then specific tasks display based on what they selected. So I like to think of this one as a choose your own adventure. So they're selecting their little adventure at the top, and then they're going to end up with a list of tasks that match that. So in this example, it's super hard to see, but I'm doing it based on credit. So that was the options that they could do. So they have CME, CNE, CE, MOC, depending what credit they're going for, they could select that in the drop down, and then the tasks that specifically meet the criteria for that credit will be what displays and no others. I've seen other clients use like positions. So you have a physician route, a nurse route, a psychology route. There's a lot of different ways you can use that. And it really offers a lot of options. The other option there on the right side is registration codes. And this is applied to the users on their back end account. So in their profile, and it's typically done in the registration module or through your integration. And it goes through from the registration and syncs down to their user profile. And then the tasks in the survey magnet will filter based on the codes. So, you have one credit selection task that is filtered to your CE codes. And that way, this option keeps attendees totally hands off. So this is set by you, and it is the most restricted way of making sure they get what they paid for. And they're not trying to claim credit they shouldn't have, or they're not trying to get credit for dates they didn't pay for. This is going to help you do that. The thing I want to point out about this one too, though, is task filtering. You're filtering to tasks. Okay, so more than likely, if you're filtering to a task, you're using a user group or you're using a registration code, it's choosing whether or not a task is going to display and be accessible. So once that task displays, the user will have access to everything inside that task. So if you need to take it a step further and restrict access to specific sessions, that is going to be the next two options we talk about. So this is kind of bigger world. We got task filtering, and then we're going to talk about session-specific access restrictions. So you'll want to consider this if you have pre-cons, post-cons, workshops. You want to take a few extra steps to make sure only the people who attended have access to the session information. Something similar to that. So we're taking it down to an extra step of detail there. So our first option here is our verification codes. So these require a user to input a specific code for that session into the system before the evaluation unlocks. So you'll see that in your the image off to the right there. That's a little box where they have to input the password essentially. These codes are created by you, so they can be extremely unique and detailed. They could be themed for your event. They could also be fairly generic based on what your needs are. We recommend that you build these codes into the slide deck for that session or built into the speaker's script so that it's communicated to the attendees inside the session. So theoretically, then, only the attendees inside that session would get the code and have access to that stuff in the magnet. The other option you have there is unlock codes, and they can be used in the magnet just like they are in the website in the app if you're familiar with that. So you would add an unlock code to a presentation in the Education Harvester, and then you would add unlock codes to a user profile. And then if the session and the user have matching unlock codes on the back end, the system will open up the evaluation. These unlock codes can be added in the registration module. They can be added through your integration, and they can be added to user profiles in a worksheet if needed. So there's a few different ways you can apply those unlock codes. All right, so probably one of our newest options is we can restrict access based on our session scanning system or check-ins, which is our mobile app add-on. So you do need to have the add-on to use this in the survey magnet. But essentially, what happens is that you will apply an unlock code to the presentation in the Ed Harvester. And then when this user comes up and they get their badge scanned by the attendee or the attendant, or they scan a QR code and the system says you're checked in, the system will add that matching unlock code to the user's account at that point. And then when they go into the survey magnet, that evaluation will unlock. Now, if the user does not check in, they don't get the code and it does not unlock. So that's a new one, and I'm starting to see that more and more, and that's working really well. So I think more people are going to start using that and see the benefit in that. And then the last one we have here is our play only mode. And this is compatible with the Eventscribe website only, and it's really used for on-demand content. So it works really similarly to the check-ins, but instead of scanning into a session, they have to fully watch a video. You can offer play only mode when you want users to unlock evaluations or unlock their credit by watching content. So once the user fully completes the video, that unlock code will get added to their account and they'll have access in the magnet. The play only mode does not have rewind or fast forward, which is needed for most accreditation purposes. So that's good. That is not an option there, and they are forced to watch or listen to the full content. So with all of these different options and flexibility in the survey magnet, clients have found unique ways to use the product outside of your standard evaluations. And Amy is going to talk through some of those ways next.
Thanks, Beth. All right, so I am quickly going to talk about just a couple of unique use cases that I have seen with some of my clients and some other survey magnets that I am familiar with. And one of them is using Survey Magnet to solicit feedback from other people, not just your attendees. Because remember, like, your attendees are your lifeblood, yes, but your exhibitors, your sponsors, your presenters, and even your staff are going to have really good feedback for you. They are all going to have a different and unique experience. And again, because you can't be everywhere at once, you're going to want to get that feedback from everyone. Now, using Survey Magnet for this kind of feedback, it may not work for everybody. This is definitely something you'd want to discuss with your project manager. But if your exhibitors are going to be registered attendees, or your presenters are already registered attendees, and your staff are already registered attendees, like Beth was talking about, some of those task filters, you know, if you are pushing data to their accounts, there's a code in their account that's letting us know they are an exhibitor. That's a great use case for creating an exhibitor survey in your survey magnet and filtering it to just your exhibitors. We do have survey tasks. I know some people use survey tasks in the Education Harvester and the Expo Harvester for those kinds of surveys, and they work really well too. But if you can use the survey magnet for those kinds of surveys, the reporting in Survey Magnet is going to be a little more dynamic for you. But again, this is definitely something you'd want to discuss with your project manager before adding these kinds of surveys into your magnet. So something else I'm seeing more and more is poster judging. We have some clients who use Survey Magnet for attendee feedback and poster judging. I have one client who bought Survey Magnet to only do their poster judging. And what's really nice about the poster judging in Survey Magnet, as opposed to, again, doing it in your, poster harvester for your, poster judges, is that because Survey Magnet is mobile responsive and can be used in conjunction with Eventscribe website and mobile app, your judges can do their judging in real time as they are watching these poster presentations, as opposed to having to do paper and pencil, and then the admin has to do all of that data input and then run reports. Again, depending on your needs, you can have like a lot of restrictions in Survey Magnets. So maybe we filter your poster judging task to poster judges. If you don't mind that your attendees may see that task in their task list, you can keep your Survey Magnet, that task open. I have some people that use unlock codes to actually assign the poster judges assignments right in Survey Magnet. So when they go into that credit selection task, that session evaluation task Beth was talking about, they only see the posters that they were assigned to score or judge. And then Another really nice use of the survey magnet for this kind of instance is that after the event, you can use that task in the harvester that Beth was talking about to let your poster presenters see their scores and their feedback without you having to do the math, parsing out those, exporting all those PDF reports, parsing them out, and then sending emails. So this is just an example of one client who is using Survey Magnet for poster judging, and they are using, this is an example of a multiple choice question that they use in their paper or in their poster evaluations. And then this is a screen. This is just an image of another client using their Survey Magnet for poster judging. And they are using that Likert scale rating, that 5-point rating scale, to get that feedback for their poster presenters. Something else I have seen people use their Survey Magnet for is voting. And, the options here are really limitless, but some things that I've seen people use Survey Magnet for, voting on your board of directors, which is in this image here, educator of the year, technical competition entries, bylaws amendment proposals, having those pass or fail. And then my very favorite example is the Modern Quilt Guild uses their Survey Magnet. Their attendees vote on the best quilt square. I just think this is one of the most fun examples I have ever seen anybody use Survey Magnet for, so I had to give it its own little shout out. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Erin for questions.
Hi, yeah, thank you. That is a great example that I wasn't expecting to hear, so I'd love to see that. Wonderful. Thank you guys both. Awesome information. Again, if you have questions, please drop them in the QA chat. We have a couple that we've received so far, but I want to invite everyone else. We do have a few more minutes, so we have plenty of time to take care of other questions you may come up with. Okay, so the first question is more around reporting within Survey Magnet. Can you kind of give some insights into the types that are available?
Absolutely. So yeah, that's a great question, as we did not cover reporting too much, but the Survey Magnet does have reporting. So it's pretty much got a lot of anything you can need. We have the raw answer data, you have summarized data, you have data on your overall event evaluations, your session evaluations. We can pull your quiz scores, user credits. So all of that is in there for you to pull, most of it via Excel or PDF, whatever is going to work best for you. But there's definitely several options in there for you to get that data out of the system.
Excellent. Okay. Another that I do think you may have touched on earlier, Beth, but how many credit types can be managed in Survey Magnet?
Yes, we can do up to 30 different types in the magnet.
Great. Okay. That's what I thought I heard. I wanted to make sure we got that touched again. There was a question that was kind of self-answered, I saw. There is support information on documentation portal within Cadmium. If you haven't been out there, it's the support.gocadmium.com website. So certainly go out there. Obviously, we've got the experts here. So I want to give another opportunity for any questions to come through that we can tackle for today. Also, kind of an invitation if you have any unique use cases or questions about those cases that Amy was able to share with us. So we'll give it another, 20 seconds to see if anything else pops up. But in the meantime, while we kind of watch the feed come through, I definitely want to thank you guys for the information that you shared. This was very comprehensive, and I hope everybody that joined was able to learn something new, but also kind of think of new opportunities or ways to leverage Survey Magnet for your individual events. Everything certainly is going to be unique. Not everyone has the exact same scenario that we're dealing with. So that will be our wrap up for today. So appreciate everybody for joining. Be on the lookout for both the survey and the recording. And thank you both for presenting. Appreciate all of your time. So have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.